Turning your back on something or someone that you devoted your entire life to is an awful experience. It really eats away at your mind and heart. You experience many different emotions: anxiety, fear, doubt, loneliness, and anger. When I decided to leave religion behind, I felt like I was letting down everyone in my church and my family. You see, I come from a super Christian, Holy Ghost filled family. My mom, grandma, granddad, uncles, friends, my cousins, even my wife. Everybody is saved, sanctified, and Holy Ghost filled. So imagine their reaction when I posted this video to my Facebook describing why I decided to leave the church. The effect it had on me was brutal. Even the months leading up to that decision were rough. I prayed endlessly for God to reveal himself to me so I wouldn't have to make such a drastic decision. I was afraid I was making the wrong choice. Was this the devil or was it my own mind? What would people think? I'm the minister of music. But I had to overcome all of those thoughts and do what was best for me. You see, we were taught in church that you focus on God and not yourself. We would say things like, I need to decrease so God can increase. Less of me and more of you, Lord. My life is not my own. To you I belong. So thinking for myself was difficult because I was indoctrinated to depend on God. The process of breaking those chains religion had on my mind was and still is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I received a lot of support from people who'd gone through similar experiences when I posted that video. Most of them didn't leave religion like me and become an unbeliever though. Many of them just changed churches and/or denominations. Why didn't you just leave your church and find a new one? They'd often ask. And I thought about changing churches a few times back then, but I was convinced or indoctrinated to believe that our doctrine was the one true and only way and that everybody else was wrong. This was what we were taught. So I didn't want to go to another church because I was afraid I wasn't going to get that real true gospel. Plus, I was committed to my own church. I was over the choir and the music ministry. I loved doing that. That was my passion. I was completely invested in helping my church grow. I didn't want to run away. Also, I felt like this is where God wanted me to be. So I stayed and I watched our church slowly die. Poor leadership, burnt out members, no youth to carry the work forward, not enough dedicated members. The list of problems went on and on. My life was a mess. I was lost and God was absent. You see, the church was the one place I went to escape my dreadful life. The one place I could go and feel useful and see my singing and playing take effect and move people to tears, dance, or excitement. I felt validated. And for a lost 20-something-year-old man, validation was important. I was doing God's work, or so I thought. So when the church started to die, I had nothing to bring me joy. I was forced to address my discontent with God and his religion. I could no longer hide behind the church. Enough was enough. I put my life in God's hands and it was destroyed. So I took it back and made a choice to benefit me. Damn the church. This is what I want. I'm out. I remember talking to my mom when all of this was going down, and I was trying to explain to her how I was feeling and how I felt like I had exhausted every means of trying to connect with God. And she'd listen and try to understand, but one day she tried to tell me that I wasn't serious enough and that I expected everything to come too quickly and too easily. She suggested that I hadn't fully repented to God, and maybe that was why I wasn't connecting with him the way I wanted. This angered me. It angered me to the point of screaming and tears. Like a child, I threw a fit, hung up in her face, and stormed out of my home in a rage. My own mother, after seeing the stress, pain, and disappointment I was going through, instead of defending me, coming to my aid, she defended her God and pointed blame at me. She was doing exactly as the Bible commanded in Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. Loving God more than her own child. For someone to say you haven't given your all to a cause and that's why you're suffering is one of the biggest slaps in the face one could ever endure, especially when you know you've given your all and then some. So my mind was made up after that. And don't get me wrong, my mother and I have a great relationship and I hold no grudges against her. I understood she was just as indoctrinated as I was, a slave on the plantation of religion. So when I came to her talking about leaving that plantation, of course I was met with hesitation, trepidation, and finger pointing. Me and my pastor also had words after I came out as an unbeliever, and I honestly thought he was just gonna kick me out of the church. But in his good faith, he still wanted me to be a musician. However, I was stripped of my minister of music title and I could no longer sing or lead praise services. This really confused me. My exit video did numbers on Facebook, so I wondered curiously why he'd still want me at his church as a musician. You see, we're taught the music ministry is very, very important. It's the second most important ministry in the church behind the pulpit ministry. So if you have a musician, the lead musician who's an unbeliever, playing the keyboard for your services, then apparently that ungodly spirit will hinder the church service. But the pastor said he hoped that God would change my mind, so he allowed me to stay. But I knew that wasn't happening. So I stayed until I was ultimately fired when he realized I wasn't changing my mind. I'm never changing my mind. So where am I currently in my beliefs? I went through many metamorphoses in the last year regarding my views on God and religion. At first, I considered myself agnostic. Then I flirted with atheism. Now, I just consider myself an unbeliever. All these titles are unnecessary. There are many things in the world and its processes that I simply do not and can't understand. So before, naturally, the easiest way for me to answer something I don't understand was to say, God did it. Now, I don't know if God or gods or goddesses exist because you can't prove it. Also, you can't prove that they don't exist either. To me, it's just an unnecessary headache. I live my life as if there is no God. I do not acknowledge one whatsoever. I simply do not care. If the Christian God were real, I still would not want to serve him. I do not like the biblical God as a character. I disagree with his tactics. I disagree with his methods. My life is so much better without all of that added stress. So yeah, that's an abbreviated version of my experience leaving the church and where I am currently. I'm loving all the commentary and feedback I'm getting from all of you, and I really appreciate the interest in hearing my story. It's good to communicate with like-minded individuals. I'd love to read about some of your experiences as well. What was it like for you when you left the church? What did you go through mentally? Let me know in the comments section. Stay tuned for more content. This is the Black Heretic.